Welcome to our deep dive into Madhouse.
The 1989 comedy.
You got it.
That might make you rethink those Thanksgiving invitations.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
You know, that's one.
Hilarious film about a couple.
John Larroquette
Yeah.
and Kirstie Alley.
Trying to renovate their dream house.
But then,
Chaos. And a bunch of their relatives just show up
unannounced
unannounced.
and overstay their welcome.
What's interesting about Madhouse is that it takes this common fear we all have.
Oh, yeah.
The fear of guests who just won't leave and cranks it up to 11.
To 11.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
haven't we all had that experience?
Right.
Like at some point,
Especially around the holidays.
especially around the holidays.
You picture a peaceful Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
and then suddenly you're overrun
You're over
with loud relatives.
kids bouncing off the walls.
And maybe even a pet
A pet.
that decides to steal the show.
Steal the show.
And Madhouse captures that feeling perfectly.
But with a hilarious twist,
Twist.
the filmmakers actually drew inspiration from real-life stories of Nightmare House guests.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they took those real-life anxieties and amplified them.
Amplified.
Them slapstick and absurd situations,
So they just look
creating this kind of cathartic release for the audience.
like they're giving us permission
Yeah,
to laugh at our anxieties.
exactly.
Especially during the holidays.
Especially during the holidays.
Yeah.
It's so important.
It is.
And the film does a great job of balancing those relatable situations with
Okay.
that over-the-top humor,
Love that.
runaway goats,
Oh,
houses tilting on their foundations.
Oh, my God.
And, of course,
Yeah.
a dog with impeccable comedic timing.
That's what I love about these classic comedies.
Yeah.
They're funny on the surface,
Right.
but they tap into something deeper.
Deeper.
Something about the human experience
Yeah.
that we can all relate to.
And speaking of that human experience,
Mm.
the casting in Madhouse is spot on.
Spot on.
John Larroquette as that uptight husband,
Yeah.
slowly losing his sanity,
Losing it.
is just
Really nails that feeling of being overwhelmed,
He does.
doesn't he?
Yeah.
You can see the stress building
You can.
as the house guests just push him further and further
There.
towards his breaking point.
And Kirstie Alley
Yeah.
is equally fantastic.
Is his wife.
She brings a witty,
She does.
sarcastic edge to the character.
Always ready with a sharp comeback.
It's that perfect blend of exasperation
Yeah.
and resilience
Resilience?
that makes her so relatable.
She's great.
You can tell she loves her family,
Yes.
but she's not afraid to let them know
Mm.
when they're driving her crazy.
And their chemistry together
Yes,
is what really makes the movie work.
it really does.
They feel like a real couple
A real couple.
trying to navigate this chaotic situation.
Speaking of navigating chaos.
I read that the film's original working title
Oh.
was Guests from Hell.
Oh, wow.
Pretty fitting.
It certainly is.
What you say?
A more direct title.
Yeah?
And perhaps even darker.
Darker.
Which makes you wonder why they ultimately changed it
To Madhouse.
to Madhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perhaps Guests from Hell was a bit too intense
Right?
for a family comedy.
Yeah.
But then again,
But then again,
maybe it reflects a shift
a shift
in comedic sensibilities
over time.
over time.
Back then,
Hold on.
audiences might have embraced that darker humor
More readily.
more readily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating point.
Comedic tastes do evolve,
They do.
and what might have been considered hilarious in 1989
Yeah.
might not land the same way today.
It makes you think about how humor can reflect the anxieties of a particular era.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in a way,
Yeah.
Madhouse captures a specific brand of 80s and 90s comedy
Mm-hmm.
that relied heavily on slapstick and physical humor.
Yeah, it was a time when audiences really embraced that over-the-top style.
Right.
And Madhouse definitely delivers on that front.
It does.
The domino effect of increasingly hilarious mishaps
Yes.
throughout the film
Yeah,
is just pure comedic gold.
it is.
Pure comedic gold.
And while that style of humor might not be as prevalent today,
Yeah.
it still has a certain charm and nostalgic appeal.
Nostalgic appeal.
For those of us who grew up with it,
Absolutely.
it takes you back
Takes you back.
to a simpler time in comedy.
Yeah.
Where the laughs came from the sheer absurdity
Absurdity.
of the situation. But even beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
Madhouse still resonates
Still resonate.
with audiences today
Stay.
because those anxieties about House guests.
House guests and holiday stress
Holiday stress.
are universal
Universal.
and
Completely
timeless.
timeless.
It's like holding up a funhouse mirror to our own holiday gatherings.
I love that analogy.
We might not have a runaway goat, right? Or a house literally tilting on its foundation.
Right.
But the underlying anxiety
Underlying anxieties.
about
That's-
hosting,
Pleasing guests.
pleasing guests,
And maintaining a semblance of sanity
you got to keep it together,
are things that a lot of us can relate to,
especially during Thanksgiving,
especially during Thanksgiving.
when those family dynamics
Yes.
can be amplified to the extreme.
It's funny because it's true.
It is
And you know what?
That is-
Sometimes a good laugh
a good laugh.
is the best way to deal with those anxieties.
It really is.
Absolutely.
It provides that release.
Laughter can be a powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
for diffusing tension
Diffusing tension.
and reminding us not to take ourselves too seriously.
Not to take ourselves too seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where a movie like Madhouse comes in.
It does.
It lets us laugh at those shared anxieties,
Shared anxiety.
those universal experiences that can sometimes make us feel like
Like we're the only ones.
we're the only ones going through it.
And we're not.
And we're not.
And it reminds us that even in the midst of holiday chaos,
Yeah.
there's always room
Always room
for a little bit of fun.
for a little bit of fun.
So to our listener,
Yeah.
if you're looking for a movie to watch this holiday season,
This holiday season,
one that will provide some laughs
some laughs,
and maybe even some cathartic release,
cathartic release,
I think Madhouse is a great choice.
without a doubt.
A great choice.
It's a classic for a reason.
It is.
The humor is timeless.
Timeless.
The performances are fantastic.
Fantastic.
And it just might remind you
Remind you.
that even amidst the holiday chaos,
Holiday chaos.
there's always room for a little fun.
There's always room for a little fun.
Have you ever experienced anything similar?
Oh,
Maybe a house guest who overstayed their welcome?
maybe a house guest who overstayed their welcome.
Or a holiday gathering that went hilariously off the rails?
I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to that.
Yeah.
That's part of what makes Madhouse so enduring.
It taps into those shared experiences
Shared experiences.
and reminds us that we're not alone in our holiday craziness.
in our holiday craziness.
Speaking of real-life experiences,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how Madhouse still resonates with audiences today,
30 years.
over 30 years after its release.
You're right. It makes you wonder,
Makes you wonder.
what is it about this film
Yeah.
that continues to capture our attention
Capture our attention.
and make us laugh,
Make us laugh.
even decades later?
Even decades later, I think it's a testament to the film's ability to capture those universal anxieties.
Yeah.
The fear of overstaying your welcome,
Right.
the pressure to be the perfect host,
Yeah.
the sheer chaos that can erupt
Oh, yeah.
when you mix family dynamics with a holiday celebration.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that people
They'll always experience.
Yeah.
And Madhouse provides
a safe space.
a safe space to laugh at those anxieties.
It's like the movie is saying, hey,
Yeah, we've all been there.
right.
It's okay to laugh at this,
exactly.
even if it's a little stressful.
And maybe by laughing at it,
Yeah.
we can take some of the power away
Take away the power.
from those anxieties.
Yeah.
And I think there's also something to be said for the film's pure escapism.
Escapism.
It's a chance to laugh at the absurdity of it all,
Absurdity.
to see our anxieties played out on screen
On screen.
in a way that's both hilarious and reassuring.
Hilarious and reassuring.
It's almost like a form of therapy.
I think you're on to something there.
Sometimes the best way to deal with a stressful situation
Mm-hmm.
is to just step back and find the humor in it.
The humor.
And Madhouse definitely gives us permission to do that.
Does.
And let's not forget the nostalgia factor.
Oh, the nostalgia.
For those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s,
The 80s and 90s.
Madhouse is a blast from the past.
It is.
It reminds us of a time when slapstick and physical humor were at the forefront of comedy.
It's like a time capsule
Yeah.
of that particular style of humor.
Yeah.
Which, while maybe not as prevalent today,
Right.
still holds a special place
Our special place.
in our hearts.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love a good pratfall
Oh, good bro.
or perfectly timed
Perfectly timed.
facial expression?
Yes.
Madhouse
Yeah.
is filled with those moments.
Filled with them.
But beyond the nostalgia,
Yeah.
I think the film's lasting appeal also lies in its heart.
In its heart.
Beneath all the chaos
Mm-hmm.
and absurdity,
Yeah.
there's a genuine warmth
Genuine warmth.
and affection between the characters.
You're right, even though they drive each other crazy.
They drive each other crazy.
You can tell they truly care about each other.
Yes.
It's that underlying sense of family.
Family.
even amidst the dysfunction.
Amidst the dysfunction.
That makes the movie so endearing.
Endearing.
That's something that transcends generations.
It does.
The idea that family, despite its challenges, is ultimately a source of love and support.
It is.
Definitely. And Madhouse reminds us that even when family pushes our buttons,
when they push our buttons,
those bonds are worth cherishing. Even if it means occasionally wanting to pull our hair out.
Pull our hair out.
Speaking of pushing buttons.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how we were talking about the filmmakers drawing inspiration?
Yes.
From those real-life nightmare houseguest stories?
The real-life nightmare houseguests?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Has that made you think about
Well,
any particularly memorable houseguest experiences?
let's just say I've had my fair share of houseguests who have tested my patience.
Tested your patience.
Over the years.
But you know those experiences?
Yeah.
As frustrating as they might have been at the time,
Right.
now provide some pretty amusing anecdotes.
I bet.
Yeah.
It's funny how those stressful moments
Can become comedic gold in retrospect.
Comedic gold.
And it makes me wonder
Yeah.
about all the hilarious houseguest stories out there.
Oh, yeah.
Just waiting to be told.
You know, that's a fantastic point.
It is.
Perhaps we should reach out to our listeners and ask them to share their own outrageous or hilarious houseguest stories.
That's an idea I can get behind.
Imagine the comedic potential of hearing those real-life madhouse scenarios.
Madhouse scenario.
Straight from the people who lived them. Exactly. It could be like a Madhouse sequel.
The sequel.
But with real-life stories that are even crazier than fiction.
I love it.
Yeah.
It would be fascinating to hear how those experiences compare to the movie.
Yeah.
And to see if there are any common themes or trends.
Common themes and trends.
In those houseguest horror stories.
In those horror stories.
And who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe we'll uncover some hidden comedic gems.
Some hidden gems.
That could inspire the next great holiday movie.
That could inspire the next...
So to our listeners.
If
you've got a wild houseguest story.
A wild story.
That's just begging to be shared.
We
want to hear it. Send it our way. And maybe we'll feature it. In a future episode.
We're all ears.
We are.
And ready to laugh along with you.
Laugh along.
Because as Madhouse so perfectly demonstrates, sometimes the best comedy comes from the most unexpected places. And often involves people
who just won't leave.
You just won't leave.
So back to Madhouse. We've talked about its humor, its relatability, and its lasting impact on audiences. But for those who might be unfamiliar with the film, can you give us a quick rundown of the key takeaways?
What are the things that we want them to remember about this comedic gem? First and foremost, Madhouse is a laugh-out-loud funny movie. If you're looking for a good chuckle, especially during the often stressful holiday season, this film is a great choice. It takes the universal experience of dealing with house guests and amplifies it to absurd and hilarious levels. Beyond the surface level humor. The film also taps into those deeper anxieties we all feel. About hosting.
Pleasing guests.
And
maintaining a sense of normalcy.
When
our lives are turned upside down. And while the film might exaggerate those anxieties for comedic effect, it also offers a sense of catharsis. And remind us that we're not alone in those feelings. We're not alone.
We've all been there. In one way or another. And of course, we can't forget about the incredible performances by John Larroquette and Kirstie Alley. Their comedic chemistry is fantastic. And they really bring those characters to life.
They do.
They make you believe that this couple, despite all the chaos surrounding them, truly love and care for each other.
They do.
And that underlying warmth adds a layer of heart to the film. That makes it even more enjoyable.
Even more enjoyable.
Absolutely. So if you're looking for a movie
A movie.
That will make you laugh.
Make you laugh.
Make you think.
Make you think.
And maybe even make you feel a little bit better.
A little bit better.
About your own crazy family dynamics.
Crazy family dynamics.
Then Madhouse is definitely worth checking out.
Definitely worth checking out.
And if you've got a wild house guest story of your own. Don't forget to share it with us.
Share it with us.
We're always looking for new material for future deep dives.
The future deep dives.
But now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And talk about some of the less obvious.
But
equally fascinating aspects of Madhouse.
I'm intrigued. What do you have in mind?
Well, for starters, I'm curious about the movie's critical reception.
Okay.
How did critics react to Madhouse when it was first released?
When it was first released?
That's a great question.
It is.
And it's actually quite interesting how the film was received back in 1989. While Madhouse was certainly a box office success, critics' reactions were a bit mixed. Some praised the film for its over-the-top humor.
The humor.
And the comedic talents of its lead actors. They appreciated the film's ability to tap into those relatable anxieties about family and holidays. And they found the slapstick sequences genuinely funny.
However, other critics felt the film relied too heavily on those broad comedic tropes. And lacked the depth or sophistication of other comedies of the time.
It's kind of a classic case of a movie that appealed to audiences more than critics.
Exactly. And that's not uncommon for comedies.
Not uncommon.
Especially those that lean heavily into slapstick and physical humor. Critics often look for something more nuanced or thought-provoking. While audiences are perfectly content with a movie that makes them laugh.
That makes sense. And at the end of the day, isn't a comedy's primary goal
It is
to entertain and make people laugh?
Absolutely. And in that regard, Madhouse undoubtedly succeeded. It found its audience.
And has continued to entertain viewers for over 3 decades. Which is a testament to its enduring appeal.
It makes you wonder if some of those critics might have a different perspective on the film today.
A different perspective.
Perhaps in the context of modern comedy. With its diverse range of styles and subgenres. Madhouse might be viewed with a bit more appreciation. For its classic comedic elements.
That's a fascinating thought.
It is.
It would be interesting to revisit those critical reviews.
Revisit those reviews
And see if they hold up over time. Perhaps what was once seen as simplistic, formulaic humor might now be viewed with a sense of nostalgia. Or appreciation for its influence on later comedies.
It just goes to show that perspectives on art can change over time.
They can.
And what might have been dismissed in one era can be celebrated in another. Exactly.
And speaking of changing perspectives, one thing that's always struck me about Madhouse is its portrayal of gender roles. Remember, this film was made in the late 80s. A time when traditional ideas about family and domesticity were still very much prevalent.
You're right. And looking back at it now, it's interesting to see how those gender dynamics play out in the film.
While the film is primarily a comedy, it does offer some subtle commentary on the expectations placed upon men and women within a traditional family structure. John Larroquette's character, for example, is clearly struggling with the pressure to be the provider and the head of the household. He's trying to juggle work, family obligation, and this overwhelming sense of responsibility. And it's all pushing him towards a breaking point. And Kirstie Alley's character, while often portrayed as the witty and sarcastic voice of reason, is also shown to be carrying a heavy burden. She's managing the household. Dealing with the constant influx of guests. And trying to keep her husband from completely losing it.
Keep her husband from losing it.
And while the film doesn't explicitly address these gender roles, it does offer a glimpse into the anxieties and frustrations that can arise within a traditional family dynamic. It suggests that those roles, while often presented as natural or predetermined, they can be quite limiting and even damaging
to both men and women.
It's a subtle but thought-provoking layer to the film.
It is.
That might not be immediately apparent upon first viewing.
But it adds a layer of depth. To the characters in their relationship. And it makes you wonder how those same dynamics might play out in a more modern context.
Exactly. It's an interesting thought experiment.
It is.
To consider how Madhouse might be reimagined today. With more contemporary perspective on gender and family structures. It could be a fascinating exploration of how those societal shifts have impacted our expectations and anxieties around those concepts.
That's a brilliant idea.
It could make for a really compelling remake.
Or
even a sequel that revisits those characters and their dynamics in a new light. It would be fascinating to see how those characters have evolved. Or perhaps haven't evolved. Over the years. And it could offer a fresh perspective. On those timeless anxieties about family.
Holidays.
And the challenges of maintaining sanity. In a world that often feels like it's spinning out of control. So to our listener. We've taken you on a deep dive into Madhouse. Exploring its humor, its relatability, its lasting impact, and even its subtle social commentary. We've uncovered layers of meaning and insights. That might not be immediately apparent on the surface. And we've invited you to consider the film's relevance
to
your own experiences. And we hope you've enjoyed the journey.
I have.
Perhaps you'll be inspired to revisit this comedic classic. Or maybe you'll share your own outrageous houseguest story with us. Either way, we appreciate you joining us for this deep dive.
Absolutely.
Until next time. Remember to embrace the chaos. Find the humor in the everyday. And cherish those family bonds.
Cherish them.
Even when they're tested to their limits.
Oh.